The Valley Current.
Tom, you okay?
Yeah, I'm all right here.
You look loud and clear. It's great.
Thank you. I just see your high school picture there.
Oh, thank you for being flexible, and
That's quite
I
all right.
appreciate it.
That's quite all right.
So,
Yes.
for those who don't know, Tom Casey has been on the show before, and he does a number of books, and he's finishing one soon that we're going to spend some time talking about because he studies leadership and what makes leadership work and what makes it fail. And that's a big topic because we sorely need more and better leaders globally. And we talk often about how there isn't really a training ground, except if you say, well, join the Army, join the Navy, join the Marines. You'll get some leadership training if you're up for it. And that's what you did because you also are a colonel in the Army, right? If I'm remembering it right?
Yeah, the Army Reserve, right? I'm retired, but yes.
I mean, that's so cool because I bet you have lots of war stories to tell, but we won't focus on that. Let's focus on the book and tell us what brought it about.
Well, listen, thank you so much for having me back. I really appreciate it. Let me just kind of set the context here, Jack, because we talked and we've been talking about the evolution of leadership since we met back at the Modern Elder Academy in 2023. Right. And just to kind of reset here, Discussion Partners at its core is a research advisory firm. We look at leadership to translate those insights and lessons learned to our clients in conversations. That's essentially our model.
Mm-hmm.
During COVID, we began a process now that is finishing after 5 years. And during COVID, we were essentially asking people, when this is over, what are the behaviors that you want to see leaders exhibit that you don't see a lot of now? Okay, now that we seem to have survived this mess, what are those behaviors? And unambiguous, there were 4. The top one was empathy. The second one was transparency. The third was accountability. And the 4th was collaboration. You and I have talked in the past about the importance of collaboration and empathy. All right. Now, we published a book called Leadership Effectiveness, The Next Curve to Flatten, where we were essentially sending the message that if your high potential development programs don't build out from this, then you have 3 options. One is you need to fix the program. Second is to think about, really, are you training the right leaders? Okay. So that was the book that came out late 2021 that was really driven by COVID.
Mm-hmm.
We continued the research going in 2022 without ever any expectation we were going to write another book.
Mm-hmm.
Candidly, that one that I just mentioned was my 6th. I thought the world had heard enough from me.
Mm-hmm.
And we began doing research because of the coming out of 2022, when you looked at the geopolitical situation overall and you looked at the situation here in the United States, it was borderline ugly. It was borderline, chaotic. And frankly, it just wasn't anything that people were feeling hopeful or optimistic about. Whether or not they were worried about the U.S. going into a recession, you were just consumed by the news of the rhetoric and et cetera, that, it just wasn't really good. So we decided, okay, well, what the hell? Let's start asking people questions about just that.
Mm-hmm.
So we posed a research question that for 18 months, it was just one question. In order from 1 to 5, what are the most reprehensible behaviors that you're observing among leaders?
Mm-hmm.
and it was unambiguous. We stopped the collection of data at the number 1,860, and I'll revert back to that in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But what essentially is the top 5 were hypocrisy, bias, expediency, and aggression.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all of those were in excess 1,400 responses out of the 1,800.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One of them, hypocrisy, was pretty close to 1,800.
Wow.
All right. So what happened is, for the last 18 months, we've been embedding the ongoing research into blogs that we're writing. And again, really, it's nice that I'm speaking to somebody who knows me as a friend.
Mm-hmm.
When I say that I'm really not interested in writing another book, I'm really not interested in writing it. But I was sitting with my computer in my lab and watching the Celtics first play Indiana, and then in the culmination coming from Boston of the high point.
Mm-hmm.
The Celtics returned to dominance.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that given everything that's going on, how people responded to those questions is something that we really should share.
Right.
Thus the book. Okay.
Well, it's a really important topic, because you look at some leaders, and there's a podcast that just came out that was based on a Wall Street Journal article talking about how Musk engages in conduct that really does fly against many of these principles, but he just got re-awarded that ginormous $56 billion pay package, and they reincorporated in Texas to avoid a revisit to the Delaware Chancery Court, where the judge there said that package is invalid. It was re-voted on, and the shareholders approved. And fundamentally, he's gotten what he wants. And in many ways, he engaged in threats, non-transparency. You could argue that he wasn't very empathetic about the views of the shareholders. He marginalized the shareholder who brought the suit, claiming that he was just, after some hold-up money. The guy owns like 9 shares. Of course, he probably has lawyers on a contingent fee, but he was pretty upset that one person was effectively getting, 56 billion multiplier on what the line employees get. Because some people look at what the multiplier is between the lowest paid employee and the CEO, right? And if it's above some multiplier, I don't know what that is these days in Silicon Valley. It seems to not matter. But I think people are saying there's some number. Maybe it actually is 56. I don't know. But there is some number where when you blow above it, and there are some countries that have specific legislation that says the number can't be more than some overall number. I think Sweden, maybe Norway, maybe some of the other Scandinavian countries have it. That's kind of worth looking at separately, but that kind of goes to this question of, are CEOs overpaid? Does that make them aggressive? Does that require them to be aggressive? And he's certainly aggressive. He engages in a lot of aggressive tactics, but he's been successful, and his companies have been uniformly successful. He hasn't had a good failure yet, to my knowledge.
Well, circling back to the research you were doing, I want to respond because to reinforce your point. Mm-hmm. When you look at these 5 reprehensible behaviors, and we use the word reprehensible to be provocative, okay? As you can imagine, the political class, the political constituency were the ones most mentioned, but they were no means alone. Mm-hmm. All right, commercial companies and people are also mentioned. Mr. Musk got honorable mention. Okay, Boeing isn't doing well in terms of people's esteem. People are actually afraid. We don't know if their astronauts are ever going to get home. Mm-hmm. Okay, and they've got whistleblowers right now, just used to have in Enron and how you had in other places. That's not a good sign. for what had been an American institution. I remember once that Senator Henry Jackson in Washington was referred to as the senator from Boeing.
Mhm.
Okay, so you've seen the demise of General Electric through self-inflicted wounds.
Mhm.
The thing is that you tend to get the leaders, you define success with those parameters, and then they turn around and keep score. I once had a client, a CEO for a very large company, who was upset about their compensation. And I said, you're never going to be able to spend all of this. Your kids will never be able to spend all this. And his response to me is, don't understand, when you're dead forever. Okay, that was his way of keeping score.
Mhm.
That the times at this particular point, it didn't almost doesn't matter who you favor in the election, presidential election, or the calling the question in terms of the UK, what they're doing, or the snap election that President Macron did in France. That what people are universally upset about, no matter who they're planning on voting for, okay, is the emotion associated, and it's the name call.
Mhm.
You can behave in a hypocritical way. You can say the person's a clown, and then all of a sudden, I'm with you all the way. That's that. There's no way to over-explain that. You're just doing something that is convenient for you now. Don't even bother apologizing for it, because there's no point.
Mhm.
And please, for the love of God, don't try to say that you were misquoted the first time.
Mhm.
Don't insult the world here by pretending that you mouth and the words didn't fly out. It's just no longer in your best interest to use them.
Mhm.
There is the president of the European Commission who once said, it's not that politicians don't know what the right thing to do is, it's just you're worried about they'll stay in office if they do it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fairly clear. Okay, going through this exercise in a time of turbulence, we emerged from it being rather hopeful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
It could be the single malt we started drinking early in the morning, but the other reason is that what we're finding is people were separating the behaviors from the leaders,
Mhm.
okay, from the policies and the need to preserve what's good.
Mhm.
Okay. Now think about it this way. One of the things we looked at, we did a pulse survey that essentially was what we would call an all is lost.
Mhm.
And we were asking ourselves the question, has it ever been this bad? Okay. And what we found was that debating whether this incident was as bad as what we have now, or that incident was as bad as what we have now. But what we came back to is the similarities between what we're experiencing right now. Okay, 1860 things were not great.
Right.
In 1857, you had the Supreme Court made up mostly of Southerners, basically reversing the Missouri Compromise, as well as going even further by saying even Black people, okay, whether they had ever been a slave or not a slave, okay, were not eligible to become citizens.
Mhm.
And, it was a test of loyalty at the time, just like it is now. Okay?
Right.
You have Robert E. Lee, the general for the Northern, was originally being considered to be the general for the Union Army. Jefferson Davis at the time was a U.S. Senator. Breckinridge was the vice president of the United States.
Mhm. Mhm.
And he transitioned to the Secretary of War in the Confederates. So, and we came after an incredibly painful exercise, which God willing, we will never have to rehouse or whatever the hell they're calling them these days. Okay, think that they can foment insurrection again. I don't think that we would hope that violence would never become the norm. Although I really fear lone wolves. I don't see another civil war. But if you stop and think about it, Jack, it's here in the United States. Okay, 50% of the people who voted will be unhappy.
Mhm.
Okay. So this will not have resolved anything, which is where the optimism comes in for us, is saying, okay, well, we need to control our own destiny because we can't be really worried about this noise level. We can't be worried about people wearing, screaming, "You're a liar" to the president of the United States, no matter who they are. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what we need to do is just re-say and use our research to say, look, 1,860 people said, this sucks. I mean, this sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Example after example after example. So and I'm going to give you a case in point that just happened to us last week.
Mm-hmm.
One of the blogs we wrote was based on Bruce Jenner,
Mm-hmm.
or now Caitlyn Jenner.
Right.
And the blog was essentially, we have our own views on things, but the blog was essentially saying, in 1976, Bruce Jenner was the superstar. Okay, he won the decathlon. He was America's child. Thought the world of the man correctly. Okay, you don't win the decathlon like he did unless you can demonstrate an awful lot of courage and discipline.
He was on every box of Wheaties.
Wheaties, did a couple of movie stints, Saturday Night Live. He was the guy.
He was. Right? He was.
And in 2015, he comes out changing his name and comes out basically saying that his sexual identity is no longer that of Bruce Jenner, is now Caitlyn Jenner. Mm-hmm. And your first reaction, okay, particularly as a mid-70s baby boomer like me, who's never been all that comfortable with it, saying, geez, what's going on?
Right.
But then you have to step back and say, wow, that really takes a lot of courage. Mm-hmm. All right. Totally coincidental, was attending a play by a transgender person who was in Boston at the American Repertory Theater, Becoming a Man, Becoming a Man, where this person had been a woman, was married to another woman, got a sex change operation, and it was, how do they navigate their marriage?
Right.
Okay, so for example, the woman, the other partner in this, said, there's a reason I married another woman. And what after the play, it happens in a lot of places, is that the actors and the authors, including people in the audience who were experiencing it, had a session, and I was hearing about the number of people's journey into becoming transgender. And I was thinking, wow, that's really courageous. Mm-hmm. And I don't personally identify with it, but that's courageous. Mm-hmm. So we wrote this blog. It dropped on Tuesday night last week.
Okay.
Within 72 hours, the hits on just my platform approached 20K.
Wow.
I have no idea why. This blog, within now a week, will probably have been opened by over 100,000 people. We have no idea why. Okay, we have no idea why. But our suspicion is that people are now starting to re-engage intellectually.
Right.
And starting to think through, one is, okay, how do we really feel about these reprehensible behaviors? Mm-hmm. That's our assumption. Now, that may be Goldilocks or, something that single malt metaphor may actually become a reality. I don't know. But at the same time, I think that consideration we're having is one of those things that suggests to me that people have just run out of patience with how things are going on all sides.
Well, we're going to see this Thursday, if it happens, the first debate between Joe Biden and the other guy, Donald Trump. Some people call him the other guy. They don't even want to use his name. They don't even want to repeat his name. And I fear that every finding that you've made is going to be illustrated in that debate on both sides, because I think Biden is being told, you have to look really forceful. just the
Right.
way the State of the Union was, which is not his character, but essentially they said, we're going to give you the script and you have to play it out in a very powerful, energetic way because you're the world leader and there's so many conflict zones that need our attention and our leadership. You have to look like you're a strong man as well. And of course, Trump is going to be super aggressive because he's already started to do it. He's already started in some of the places that he's campaigning,
Right.
saying things that are designed to not have an intellectual discussion, but have more of a fist fight or a food fight or some sort of street fight.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I don't think either one of these gentlemen can come out Thursday night and look like Gandhi. Okay.
Right.
I would hope they don't come across an Animal House.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Because I think that nobody is served by that stupidity. But I think Trump needs to tone it down. And I think Biden needs to pick it up to get over this thing like he did in the State of the Union, maybe not quite that intensely, but he needs to say, look, guys, I'm awake.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm in my 80s. I still know what the hell's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I'm a good president and I'll be a better president this next time.
Right.
Because these are the things I want to focus on. What I think is going to happen, though, is exactly what you say. I was listening to some of these clowns on a podcast when I was out hiking yesterday, I believe, and they want Biden to take a drug test, okay, and a cognitive test. And, and then the Democrats are saying, we're just as guilty here as, Trump possibly explained something about the electric boat with shark, what that has to do with public policy. But where I'm starting to not feel optimistic, but not feel pessimistic, believe that we're at the end of a road where one of three things will happen. Okay, one is, as a society, we will decide, do we want to be the object of admiration, object of pity, or object of jokes?
Right.
It's going to be one of those three. The people that I talk to on the client basis, the people, I'll use a case in point. I was down in Atlanta last week working with a client. It's a very large company. The client is extremely conservative. He's an evangelical Christian, okay, devoted to Trump because of his policies. I'm not sure I'm in the right place now. He's been a client now since 2019. He says, let's go out and take a picture so you can send it to your relatives. This is not personal.
Right.
Okay. He's a little distracted by the rhetoric. He's a little distracted by the foolishness, but he likes the policies. I don't like the guy because of the guy, but I don't like the policies even more.
Right.
Okay. I saw Nancy Pelosi interviewed last night and she choked up. He's not back yet. He's not back yet. And I remember one of the previous podcasts you and I did, we were both appalled by the laughter that Trump promoted. And we certainly shouldn't laugh at that. And then we had the same clownishness when Trump is talking about Biden's announcement of running for the presidency and starts to replicate his stutter. What good news for me is people are really starting to get out of patience with that bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what I'm saying. People are intellectually curious, but people are also pissed.
I think there's kind of a weird trichotomy that goes like this. I mean, I agree with everything you're saying, but I want to put a lens on it that says there are people that look at the presidency as this is someone that's got to go up against strongmen like Putin, like Kim in North Korea. And, there's a lot going on in the world, as you know, because you travel all over it. You visit a lot of places. And there's this whole reshuffling of who is going to be in alliance with who based on what cooperation agreement. And I don't think that Xi can be too happy that Kim is effectively cozying up to Putin, and Putin may be increasing the risk for China if China has to actually support Kim on something that's sort of induced, some sort of conflict that's induced by Putin. As a result, North Korea gets struck, and then supposedly China is supposed to come to their defense when they may not agree that this inducement through, you could see the strange bedfellows. So people say, is Biden the right guy to be in the negotiating seat? Now, we all know the president just ends up signing the treaty. There's a bunch of other people like Blinken and others that are going out to actually do the hard work and that are on top of this. And, those people are super competent. And the president fundamentally is not the negotiator. I mean, he's the figurehead. Right.
But I think that we've devolved into a situation where, think about it this way: would you ever see the head of Russia having to go to North Korea saying, the equivalent of a NATO Title V with you, but I need all the weapons you can produce because I've already started a war in the Ukraine?
Right.
Okay. That I honestly, despite all of the parades and things like that, I didn't by any means feel sorry for Putin, but I thought, dude, you really are scraping the bottom of the barrel, man.
Right.
Okay. And indirectly, it puts China in a situation, which indirectly puts us in a situation if China has to do something with.
There's that external view of a strong leader, individuals, and it is kind of like a boxing match approach where they say, well, who's going to be the stronger punch? As though that's the way negotiations happen. That's one part of the trichotomy. Mm-hmm. Then there's what you might call the socialist / versus capitalist view of how does the economy really work and how do social services work and how do taxes work, that represents kind of what's the spin that gets put on the way in which business works or doesn't work in America, and how employment works or doesn't work in America, and how taxes work. So all these sort of what you might call domestic policies that really do affect people. And they try to line up and figure out, well, which of these two guys is going to do something that's actually better for me? And of course, people that own businesses feel that Trump will be more supportive of their views, and people that work for those businesses. But I have to tell you, the reason I brought this up is Trump is running ads that tell the workers he's going to make sure there's no tax on tips. He's got billboards that say no tax on tips with Trump. He's going out to say to every one of those workers, every one of the waiters, waitresses, anyone that gets a tip, and it's a pretty large percentage of service workers that are getting tips, no taxes, because a tip is considered compensation and it's considered under Section 61 of the Internal Revenue Code income. That's taxable. Now, maybe if it's in cash, people sort of misrepresent or omit it or lie about it. So there's that other leg to the three-legged stool. And then the third leg, which I think you and I are most interested in. I mean, we're interested in all three, but who's the person that's got the vision of what this world looks like in the 21st century as AI and robots start to enter and actually make a difference in productivity and in what should be an expanded, higher cognitive level that everyone is striving for and that everyone should move up the ladder to achieve, as opposed to, hey, man, I'm just going to go home, smoke some weed, watch some videos, and get my basic income, my minimum basic income check, and I'm fine. So long as that's above a number and it covers my rent stabilized rent in whatever apartment that has rent stabilization, like in New York City, a lot of apartments still do. I mean, basically that's the third piece. And I have to tell you, I'm not super impressed with any of the candidates, any of them, on expressing a vision for what is going to be probably the biggest transformative decade or two that we're going to face if we're lucky enough to live long enough to see it, because the robotic stuff is dramatically increasing. The AI is super exponentially increasing. And there are workers that are getting displaced in a variety of ways, and they see it and they fear it. And I want to tell one story without revealing any names. Just this is, I got a call and I did a new client interview with an individual who will remain nameless, but that person, I won't even say what their gender was, had a very senior position at a college or university, very senior position in what you might say is management. And there is a genuine worry that there is going to be a major reduction in what number of administrators actually manage the teachers. And they had come up with an idea for building essentially a new business. Even though they have been in this position that is sort of a lifetime tenure thing that they could remain for the next 10, 20 years in theory, they're worried that no, there is such an effect on education, and so much of the folks who were originally going to school are either deferring or taking different paths than going to a traditional graduate school or going to a traditional college or university, that there's going to be a real impact on the number of those administrative positions that are available. So they're already in their own mind saying, I can see that I have to become my own entrepreneur and create my own business and take some of my savings to build a particular e-commerce business that they want to build. I mean, that was an amazing interview because I've never seen that before. What I typically see is the entrepreneur just got out of business school, just got out of some engineering program, and they have an idea and they're building a team. But to have someone that's in their 50s and maybe going into their 60s and saying, I think I'm going to get slashed and I'm going to need something and I want to start building it now. So I need some advice about how do I do this, because literally I'm middle-aged and I'm doing it for the first time. And I think that is a bit of what we're all going to face, all of us across the board. I mean, you're probably protected because you have a special position with leaders, but I'm not sure even lawyers that do the work I do, although I do some very sophisticated work, I don't know that it's going to maintain. I frankly don't. I think all knowledge workers are going to be impacted in a big way.
I founded this business at Discussion Partners at 58.
Right.
Okay. At the beginning of a global recession,
right.
Going through an ugly divorce, had no money, and my backup was a night manager at a pottery barn. Yeah. So
better than that.
No, I filled out the application. That was my plan B. The business is successful because I and my colleagues, we are always reinventing ourselves.
Right.
Okay. In terms of coming out of COVID, is we're a heavier reliance on Zoom than we are on showing up. That's significantly less money. Right. But it's also less travel.
Right.
And frankly, it helps us retain clients because they get, still 2 hours with somebody who they already know, and they don't have to worry about paying expenses. So there's this constant reinvention. I'm 75 is my next candle. A lot of the people I'm working with, they've already retired or they're pretty close to it. So I have to focus on the next generation of leaders coming up and making myself appealing to them if I want to continue to do this. So there is that degree of reinvention. I think that your potential client is going down some of those same roads that you have gone down, that I have gone down. And I think a lot of people in their 50s and 60s are going down. You're looking at the works that Chip Connolly, who we both know and are friends with, in terms of the new midlife. Mm-hmm. That's not going off and growing bananas necessarily or playing golf. That's doing something that makes you feel relevant. So if we look at that impetus and enthusiasm for addressing those questions, I 100% agree. But I want to go back to something I want to challenge, Jack, is that I think one of the reasons that neither of these candidates are inspiring anybody is because we don't have confidence in them for one reason or another, whether it's President Biden's age or it's Trump's persona. Where I think that we're looking right now is to come across and saying, I'm not the smartest person in the world. I am the person who knows they're not the smartest person in the world. I'm going to pose the questions, I'm going to establish some principles, and I'm going to surround myself with people who are smarter than I did. I am. The best case that I always look at was Mayor LaGuardia back in the day, way back in New York. One of the things that he was written up for is that he just had this brain trust around him, giving him great advice. Where I think that we are in terms of the political ecosystem, and you divorce the commercial leaders from this right now, is we know we're heading towards a cliff. We know we're going over it. The question is, how far are we going to fall and who are we going to fall with?
Right.
Okay. And then what are we going to do about it? This is the classic line for the Sean Connery line, which is grabbing Kevin Costner and saying, what are you prepared to do? That's where I think we're headed. Because, we've just created a book that's off to the publisher by the end of the next week. And when I'm reading the kind of anecdotal comments in this, it's you just want to reach for that Xanax. Okay, because people are so upset. They're so aggressive in how they're communicating. This really sucks. And everybody are associated with it as an idiot. Okay. You just look at this and things and you say, geez, it's really one of those things. But the thing is, this is a comment, and I was having this comment with Leah down in Baja. Is I'm a big believer, based on my background, is it doesn't matter where you're standing in that time. It only matters where you're standing last.
Right.
Okay. And we ain't there yet. We ain't there. I just, and I've seen nothing that would give me cause for optimism other than I think we've exhausted ourselves with the negativity and people are pissed. And people are just basically going to be more demanding of their leaders, and the leaders better put up or get the Christ out of the way. Right.
Well, I wish that you were actually the leadership guru for both Biden and Trump, because I think you would act as a mediator and explain to them what all your research has shown. And maybe you would get through to them, although I can't imagine that anyone could get through to the teams of handlers that are around these people, then actually have a word to say to them. Even the Pope, I think, would have a hard time having a meeting with all three of them in one room at one time. You know what I'm saying? I mean, maybe that's in the cards for the future, but I don't see it happening.
One of the things I admire about President Biden is he surrounds himself with historians, and he does meet with them.
Yeah.
Okay. John Beach, Michael Beschloss, the gentleman from Princeton, who's Eddie, a whole group of historians.
Right.
And he meets them, and it's not a how'd you like a cup of coffee? It is what's going on. Is there any precedent for this, et cetera? So he's taking that tack. I mean, it's one of the things that, I know you do because we've talked about it. I certainly do, is I purposely interact with people just to find out how they look at the world, what's going on there.
Right.
But seeing you invoke the Pope, I got to tell you a recent story. I was in Italy with my wife, and was in Rome. And while I was actually back at February, and was in a store.
Right.
And I tend to buy glasses because I wear glasses. I'm a little bit like Elton John. I want to mix it up. Actually, I like to get different kinds of frames. So we're in a small, and I don't go to like the Rome equivalent of Four Eyes. I see these little shops in Glen. I was in a little shop. I was conversing with the owner in English. Okay. My wife is quadlingual. She was speaking Italian to him. And I was looking for frames. And while I was looking for frames, I was seeing a picture of the Pope, okay, on the wall. And I'm thinking, oh, this guy's pretty Catholic. And it is Rome, so hadn't initially thought about it. But then I started looking closer at the pictures, and I realized it was pictures of the Pope in the store that I was in. And I look at the man, and I said, is this where the Pope gets her glasses? And my wife reverts into Spanish, starts talking to the guy. Turns out the man is from Argentina.
Ah, okay.
So it's the Pope, family business. Of course, to bring it all back to me, I said, well, when he buys something, does he use a credit card? Is he paying euros?
They have people that just handle it in the background for him. I'm sure he doesn't touch money.
Oh, he was there checking it out. He was there checking it out.
Wow.
But just circling back to the process, we're months away from nothing but chaos in between. Okay, and and it's going to get uglier, and it's going to get more confusing. But one of the lessons I learned when I was a kid in awkward situations is, okay, and stop feeling sorry for yourself, because there's a whole bunch of people that they're not breathing. So shut up and walk. And I think that's pretty much where we are right now.
Well,
I'm actually more optimistic than I probably am entitled to be, but why not?
Well, Tom, I look forward to the book. What's the actual title going to be? So
you're gonna love this. You're gonna love this one. When you write a book, the two things you argue about is the title and the design of the cover.
Right. It's important. It's really important.
Writing is irrelevant to that. The title that we've chosen is Leadership's Future, Shouting into the Wind.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. We just want to make a point. Is it's not going to be easy.
Well, we'll look forward to it, and we'll look forward to reading it. And I hope you send a copy to Biden and send a copy to Trump, and just imagine that maybe one of their handlers will say, hey, we should read this stuff, because this will tell us something about what's upsetting people. And maybe we'll be in for a surprise, and you'll be on every TV show when one or both of them say, yeah, I read this great book by Tom Casey, and it actually helped me think through the way I should express my leadership. And I hope you have some influence in that regard.
And I can wear those glasses frames that I bought in the same store the Pope was.
That's right. Hey, thanks, Tom. Take care. Thanks for being flexible. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Tune in next time on The Valley Current.